Okay, I think we need one more day of practice. Substitution is actually probably the hardest of the ways to solve for systems of equations. I actually use it the least, but I use elimination probably the most, or graphing, especially if I have a graphing calculator. But you still need to know substitution, so we need to practice substitution. So make sure you're not using any other method but substitution, because that's what we're practicing. As soon as we get done practicing it, then you can use any method you want. We're going to do, notice that on this side, all of the answers are whole numbers. So I'm going to leave that side for you. So you're going to do 1 through 6 for sure. We're going to do 3 of these over here together. And then you can do 1 through 6 by yourself. So let's just pick some. Let's do 8, 10, and 12. I don't know what they're going to be like, but it doesn't matter. So we're going to do number 8 first. So make sure you have something to write with, and make sure you write these down, because part of your assignment is to have 8, 10, and 12 written down with the steps and everything in it. Okay, just looking at this equation, these systems of equations, I would use elimination. Like, no doubt about it. I would multiply this top equation by 2, and I would use elimination. But that's not what we're doing today. We are doing substitution. Now, unfortunately for us, none of the variables have been solved for. So this is the easiest one to solve for right here. Notice how we would have to divide by 2, we'd have to divide by 2, we'd have to divide by 6. We don't want to do any of that. So we're going to get that y by itself. That's our very first step. Okay, I think the easiest thing to do is to move the y over here and move the -4 over here. And I think that's what I'm going to do. So if you remember that trick I showed you, if you move something from one side of the equation to the other, what really happens is it just changes its sign. So the 6x is going to stay the same. We're not moving it at all. But this used to be a -4, and now it'll be a +4. And this used to be a -y, now it'll be a +y. And that's really, all that we did. We just kind of moved things around so that we could have y by itself, because we need y by itself. And I'm going to rewrite it one more time just so it looks like what we're used to. And it's not going to change anything. I'm just going to write it above it. I'm just going to write it with y on this side. These are exactly the same thing. These two together are the same thing. I just have y on the left-hand side, because that's how we're used to seeing it. So if I go back, I'm going to rewrite this top equation. And I'm going to write it y equals 6x plus 4. And now this is much simpler to deal with. We really didn't do that much, okay? We really just kind of moved some things around, and now it's going to be a lot easier. So notice that instead of writing y here, I'm going to write 6x plus 4. So I'm going to take everything that y equals and put it in place of that y. So I'm going to write 2x plus 2, I'm going to leave some space, equals 15. And then in place of this y, I'm going to put everything here. 6x plus 4. And then I'm going to distribute, and I'm, excuse me, the 2x and the 15 are going to come down because they're not going to change at all. When I distribute that 2, I'm going to get 12x plus 8, because 2 times 6x is 12x and 2 times 4 is 8. And then now I'm to the point where I need to combine like terms and solve. So I'm going to give myself some more room. Okay, so notice I have 2x and 12x that can be combined, and I'm going to get 14x plus 8 equals 15. Then I'm going to subtract 8, and I'm going to get that 14x equals 7, and then I'm going to divide by 14. Now this is where kids will really mess up. Sometimes kids will say that it's 2, but it's not 2. 7 over 14 reduces to 1/2. So actually x is 1/2, and if you put 7 divided by 14 in your calculator, you would get 0.5, which is also 1/2. And that's fine. You can use 0.5 if you want to. Okay, so x is definitely 1/2. Let's go back to the original equations, and let's decide which one we're going to use to plug 1/2. And actually the second one is going to be the easiest one, because if we take half of 2, it's going to turn into 1, which is good. Or we could use the top one too. Half of 6 is 3. It doesn't matter. Let's just use the second one though. Okay, so instead of writing x, we're going to write 1/2. And don't forget, when you multiply by a half, you're just taking half of the number. So half of 2 is 1. So now we have 1 plus 2y equals 15. Then we're going to subtract 1, and then we get 2y equals 14. And then we're going to divide by 2, and we get that y equals 7. So we do have the answer. X is 1/2, and y is 7. And it's okay that x is a fraction. Fractions are numbers just like whole numbers are numbers. So let's go back to the original, and we have right here, we have 1/2 and 7. And in number 10, we're going to have to solve again for a variable. Okay, and again, nothing is solved for. We don't have x equals something or y equals something, so we're going to have to do that work ourselves. This is going to be the easiest variable to solve for, because there's nothing in front of it. There's no coefficient except for 1. And so I'm going to rewrite this equation, and we're going to solve for that. And again, I'm going to use the method where I'm just going to drag something across the equal sign. What I really need to do is I need to move this over here. And so it's negative 2y until it goes across the equal sign, and then it changes to a positive 2y. So x is going to stay the same, and 2 is going to stay the same. But that negative 2y is now going to become a positive 2y, which is fine. You know, it's great. Whatever. It's no problem. And now I have something solved for x. Normally they write the equation, the variable first, so let's write it 2y plus 2. But it doesn't matter. We could have left it the other way. But I'll write it like this, just in case it helps us. Okay. So I've rewritten the equation to be x equals 2y plus 2. And then now I'm going to plug in everything for x into x's spot in the top equation. So I'm going to write 5, and I'm going to leave myself some space. And then the 3y and the negative 11, the negative 3y and the negative 11, they're going to stay the same because that's not going to change. We're only affecting the x. So 2y plus 2. And then I'm going to distribute that 5. So I'm going to get 10y plus 10, and then minus 3y equals negative 11. And then now this is where I'm going to start, and I'm going to combine like terms and try to solve. Okay, so now we're here, and notice that I have a y, I have a number, and I have a y on this side of the equation. So I'm going to put my two y's together. A positive 10 and a negative 3 will turn into a positive 7. So 7y plus 10 equals negative 11. And then it's just a two-step equation. So I'm going to subtract 10 from both sides. And I get 7y equals negative 21. Then I'm going to divide by 7, and I get that y equals negative 3. So we did solve for one variable, and it did take a long time. And these things are not fast problems. They do take a long time, but as long as you do step by step, every time, you'll be fine. So now we're going to go back to the original problem, and we're going to see which one of the equations we should use. Looking at the equations, I'm going to say that the second one is probably the easiest one. So I'm going to use the second one. Okay, we know that y equals -3, and we're choosing the second equation to plug it in for. So we got x minus 2 times -3 equals 2. Well, -2 times -3 is positive 6. So x plus 6 equals 2. And if we subtract 6 from both sides, we get that x is -4. So we have our two coordinates. So it's -4, -3. And if I go back, I see it here on the end here. -4, -3. Alright, we're going to do one more together, and I might have you do more than 6. I'll think about it. So let's do one more together. Let's do number 12. Always try it yourself first. So do 12 first by yourself, and then watch the video to make sure that you can do them. Because you're going to take a test on this, and you are going to be expected to do this. Okay. You know, we're back to where we were before. It doesn't really matter which one that we either need to pick this y to solve for or this x to solve for. Those are going to be the easiest ones. I'm going to pick the x just because I just feel like it might be easier. Okay, I'm going to use the trick where we're going to drag it across the equal sign. I'm going to take this over here, and I'm going to take this over here. And notice the 2y is not going to move, so it's going to stay exactly the same. It was a positive 2y, it's going to stay a 2y. But the x was negative, and when I move it across, it's going to become positive. And the 8 was negative, and when I move it across, it's going to become positive. So now I have a new equation. I have x equals 2y plus 8. And so that's what I'm going to change it to. So x equals 2y plus 8. And I'm going to use that one instead. So everywhere there's an x in this equation, I'm going to write this instead. Because I can. Because if x actually equals that, then I get to choose. Either I'm going to use x or I'm going to use 2y plus 8. So I'm going to leave space. And in that space, I'm going to write 2y plus 8. And then I'm going to distribute. And I get 4y plus 16 minus y equals 16. And I'm noticing something. I think some things are going to cancel out, so let's see what happens. Alright, when I put my y's together, I'm going to get 3y, because 4 minus 1, because this is a 1y, plus 16 equals 16. What I was noticing earlier is that when I subtract 16 from both sides, both of these are going to cancel. You know, I'm going to get 3y equals 0, which is fine, but y is going to be 0. It can't be anything else. And 0 is fine too. Like, a fraction is fine, 0 is fine. Anything that you get, it should be fine. I mean, assuming that it's correct. But so y is 0, we know that much, which actually makes our life easier because 0 is easy to multiply by. So coming back to the original, if y is 0, I think we should use the top one. And we'll just plug it back into that one. Okay, if y is 0, which it is, then instead of writing y, we're going to write a 0. Well, if you take 2x minus 0, it's like it's not there. So what we really have is 2x equals 16. Then we're going to divide by 2 on both sides, and we get that x is 8. So y is 0, and x is 8. So the coordinate point is going to be 8, 0. And sure enough, it's right here. So we did 8, 10, and 12 together. I want you to pick 7. Any 7. You cannot pick 8, 10, or 12. So your responsibility will be 7 problems from this page, not including 8, 10, or 12. If you do all of them, then you'll get bonus.